We're gonna start this carving project with a piece of wood that's somewhere between 4x4 and 5x5 centimeters in thickness. The length doesn't matter that much as long as it's at least 5 to 6 centimeters long, preferably a little bit longer so that you can hold on to it very easily. But that 5 to 6 centimeters length is what the actual figure is going to be. The first shape we're gonna carve is gonna be something like this from the side, and something like this from the top. But in terms of placing this shape onto this piece of wood, I suggest you put it this way. So this is where the head is going to be. And by placing it this way and not, for example, this way, we can make sure that the grain of the wood is pretty much symmetrical on both sides of this bear. Now it's also a good idea to draw this line of that 5 to 6 centimeters from the top so that you know where the figure is actually going to be. And then we can make this rough sketch, this kind of curvature. Just a few rough cuts. So now we have a pretty nice curvature on the back. We need this curvature on the top. So we continue with the rough cuts. But notice here that it's going to be a lot of work if we just carve from here towards the place where the head is going to be. Instead, what we can do to make this carving process a little bit easier is focus on these sharp edges, because these sharp edges are easier to carve away. I'll just add one more perspective on this. So this is what it's going to be like from the back, which means that we can also slim this down this way. And then after that, the curvature is going to be easier to carve in here because there will be a lot less wood to carve. So we can make more rough cuts. And now that the sides are also slimmed down a little bit, this area is now a lot smaller, which makes getting the curvature a lot easier. Finishing up this curvature over here is, in my opinion, maybe a little bit easier with these paring cuts, and then just make these cuts by closing your hand like this. Another type of cut that also comes in very handy is this push cut. Now over here you gotta be careful. Don't make a cut this way in the very end, because that'll easily lead to you chipping a big slice of this off. Instead, you can go to the other direction like this. So we're not completely done with this shape yet. The only missing part now is this curvature and the smooth transition between this curve and the sides. And that can be made with these sweeping cuts. Now actually here, this is going to be a lot easier if this is closer, so that then you can make decent paring cuts. I can't reach that far right now, but what I can do is make an extra edge here. And now I have a solid hold for making these paring cuts. Okay, the next step is to define a little bit of these basic features. The legs are going to be somewhere here. The front paws are going to be somewhere over here. And those limbs are going to go a little bit over here like that. So basically there's going to be 3 different deeper sections over here between the hind limbs and the front limbs, and the same on the other side, and then between both of the front limbs here. This is what we're going to do next. We're going to carve these inside corners in here, here, and here. And how we're going to do that is initially with these V-cuts. And the same on the other side. I have a little bit of a too long handle, so it's gonna make this carving process a lot easier if there's options for paring cuts all over the place. In case you still have a little bit too much, I suggest you also cut this off. If you don't have a saw, you can also do that just by making a lot of these stop cuts and then these rough cuts. It's gonna take a while, but it's gonna make the rest of the carving a lot easier. This is a lot nicer now. The middle part here is a little bit different. Since it's inside this curve, we can't really get to it the same way, but we can get to it with the tip of the blade. Triangular shape, starting from here with this push cut version, and then the paring cut version from here, and then we cut off this extra bit from here. I think this is actually called the pyramid cut, where you kind of make this inverted pyramid shape by cutting from 3 or more different sides. Now what we can do is also round out this edge over here. We're not going to finish these right away, because I think the easiest way to get nice proportionate body parts on a carving like this, or actually with most animal figure carvings, is to make a basic version of all of the different parts first and then iterate on those. And then if we make this rough head shape, just basically a circle that doesn't go all the way around from here, just like this. And when we carve that, we have more room for adjusting all of the other proportions too, since we haven't carved them to their final level of detail yet. And now, to create a little separation between the head and the rest of the body, we're going to make these stop cuts. So we press the blade pretty much directly into the wood and then cut from around the head. On the sides of the neck, we're going to carve away a little bit more compared to the front, so that this part would not be as thick. So here we can carve away a little bit more wood to kind of reveal the shoulders a little bit. The next thing are the ears, or the very basic shape of the ears. And this can be done pretty much the same way as we define this edge of the head. Press the blade into the wood, and then we have these nice little stop cuts, and we can repeat the process a few times. And then the middle can be carved away mostly with these sweeping cuts. And then we can do the same on the front here as we did on the back. And now we can see from here that, okay, at least in my case now, the back of the ears is way too far back. We can take some of this extra wood off. The ears should be a little further apart still. The area I'm coloring here needs to be removed. We cut here and we cut here. So the next thing is we define this hump over here a little bit better. And that means taking away some of this wood from here and here. The next step is this curvature here. Just from this alone, I can already see that the figure starts to look a lot more like a bear. Now it's kind of like a beaver or something. When I hide this area, it's a lot more like a bear. And then we make the edges a little rounder. And now we can do a similar thing this way. Another curve here and here. And again, we can make sweeping cuts like this. Now that's starting to look pretty good. And now this is the point where you start to see some asymmetry issues. So over here I can see that the head goes much further this way than this way. So I can take a little bit off from here. I can also see that this is a little more protruding than this. Okay, now that we have this pretty decent head shape, we can carve these limbs a little bit further. So that means getting rid of some of these unnecessary corners, making them a little bit smoother like this. We can also continue this line a little bit further over here. And now this is also the point where I can see that my initial line for where the figure stops is a little bit too high. And it's very good that there's a little bit of extra wood, because we're going to move that line a little further down. And then we can remove some of this wood from above the paws. The same thing somewhere around here, where the actual bottom of the figure is going to be. Then we can separate the front limbs from the hind limbs. This angle, something like that. And now at this point, we can make this a little more round so that the shape kind of tapers in towards the bottom also. Now we can also separate the front paws from each other. Just like that. These knees should be a little bit further down and the ankle should be a little bit further in. Mostly with these front limbs, we're just moving the entire thing closer to the center, because the toes right here need to be the point that is the furthest away from the body. So what's happening here is I'm basically revealing a little section of the sides of the bear. This is a good time to fix some proportion issues if you notice that there are some. Now we're almost at the point where all of the features of the bear have already been carved. One slight modification I'm still making before cleaning up these shapes a little bit is that I'm making a little bit of an inward curve around here to reveal the shoulders a little bit more, so that we can create this kind of a distinction between the neck and the rest of the body. And I'm also gonna make this hump on the back here a little bit more visible. Now it's time to clean up all of these shapes a little bit. And that can be done by making a little bit smaller cuts, trying to get that clean finish, getting rid of unnecessary bumps and angles, smoothing out some of these rougher areas. The paws and the ears are especially important, and what we're going to do with them is just make them more round and smooth. And that can be done by just making very small and careful cuts. Especially with the ears, it's very important to apply the least amount of pressure possible to get the job done. Because it's very easy to split big chunks off of the ears, or even the entire ear if you're not careful enough. If you feel that the blade is getting stuck, just readjust and make a smaller cut first. Okay, now it's time to make the eyes. So what we can do is just make a few sweeping cuts like this. Very tight sweeping cuts. Then we can make the edges of this new cut a little bit rounder with very, very small and careful cuts. If something is a little bit off with the eyes, you can also adjust other features around them. Here I'm gonna make just a small little dent to kind of highlight the brows on both sides. Now we're not gonna need this extra bit anymore. If you want, you can just remove it with the knife like this. But with a saw, it's a lot faster. It's time to round this edge. One more thing to add. I'm creating a little separation here to define the nose a little bit.